them. Oh, and they're also scaling. Hold on. I'm back, and today we're gonna have a look at the core render loop of the engine. I was so happy. Everything works almost right away, and I basically made the same functionality as in Unity or Godot. So let's dive right into it. So before showing off what I actually made, I want to show you a little bit of the inspiration, because I am not gonna rethink everything from scratch. I'm actually taking a huge amount of inspiration from Unity and Godot, and this is actually the part that I got from Unity. So what you need to know is that in Unity, you kind of have these lifecycle events. So you can basically build a script, and that script can subscribe to certain events that happen in the render loop. So for example, we could make an example class, and this example class we could add to an object. So let's say a spaceship, because I'm currently using spaceships as an example in my project. Then I can subscribe to the void awake. So whenever this object in the scene becomes awake, I can do something with it. In this case, it's just login and awake, and it sets a certain start value to 0. But you have the same for start. I'm actually not quite sure at the moment what the difference is between awake and start, but for the engine that I'm currently building, this will be the same thing. So this will be like, hey, the object is becoming active, please do something. And then the most important part is this over here. So this is the update event that you can subscribe to. So basically this function will trigger every so many milliseconds. It kind of depends on the frame rate of the game. And then every time an update function is getting called, we want to do something. This example is not really doing anything, because we have a float and it's called update, and then every time we update, we want to increase the value of update. Kind of confusing, but it's this value, and we add time.delta time. So what is time.delta time? A delta time is the amount of time that has passed since the last time this function was called. So let's say we have a frame rate of 1, then our delta time will be 1. If we have a frame rate of 2, so 2 frames per second, we will have a delta time of 0.5. So this is really powerful, because in this kind of loop, you could do stuff where you actually update the position of the player. You could listen to events like, hey, is the W key on my keyboard is pressed, so then I know that I have to move forward. So this is where I took my inspiration from, and you can kind of see how easy this is, because you make a class, or you make some code, you listen to this update function, and then magically it's getting called. So this is really great for other developers to do something with this. Now, let's look at what I made. So now, after seeing that example of Unity, I want to show you what I did. And I am so incredibly proud on this, because I actually didn't even know I was capable of doing this kind of stuff. But so here we have something similar from what I just showed you in Unity. We have an export class, rotator component, and we can extend it from base component. And base component will practically tell you like, hey, this is a kind of script or component, or this could basically also be like an audio player or something like that, that can be added to an object in the scene. Now, it has these events as well in here, like an onStart and an onUpdate. And onUpdate, we pass the delta time. And in this case, we have the scene item. So it's itself, like which scene item am I currently attached to in the scene. That has a transformer with an angle, and every update we wanna rotate this thing. So let me show you what it looks like in the engine. It looks like something like this. So we have 3 items currently in the scene, and 2 of them have this rotator component added to it. So have a look at this. When I press start, this is also new, this didn't work before, we can actually start the game right now. So if I press start, they rotate. I'm so happy with it, because it's not just that it rotates, that's the most impressive part, but this, that you as an external developer, you could use my engine, make a little tiny script, and make something as powerful as this. So this is of course not doing much yet, like it can only rotate, but yeah, let me show you how easy it is. So currently the rotation speed is set to 0.2. So what if we set it to 0? Sorry, I meant to say 0.1. But what if we set it to 0.2? We edit it, reload scene just to be sure. Start it. It goes faster now, but we can do more stuff with it. Okay, let's do something stupid. Let's increase the scale of this object every time. So let's say we have scale, speed, and we'll make it something like this. So really slowly, we want to increase the size. Then every update, we want to get the scale, not just the X value. Let's say new scale. No, we want to take the old. Yeah, let's just do it based on the X value. That's fine. And then we're gonna set the X value like to the new scale. And we also want to do this with the Y value. So now every update for the X and the Y value, we want to increase the scale. Let's see if this actually works. Oh, I think it's already. Let's inspect the see. Let's see what happened. I think this scaled so fast. Did we do something wrong? Maybe it just happens way too fast. Maybe just make this value way smaller. No, still happens. Hold on a moment. Oh, man, I see what I did. So everything was correct. Sometimes I feel into the habit of like GitHub Copilot suggesting something. It is this tiny bit over here. So it's actually doing plus equal, but it should be equal. That should be it. Let's have a look. Okay, now we can see in the console here that it is slowly increasing the scale. So I think this is going a little bit too slow. Let's increase that. 100 times full. Okay, clear log. Oh, look, it's increasing. So this is just a little example of how powerful this could be at some point, where somebody adds its own code, can just make changes to the scene, and I don't know, I just think it's amazing. Okay, let's try to give a little bit of insight in how this works. So when we look at the UI, if you were paying attention, then you will see that I added the start and stop button. So if you look at the code behind this start and stop button, it's super simple at the moment. It's just an HTML button. And then on click, we want to take the reference to the engine that I made, and we want to start it or stop it. And we basically tell it like, hey, start it with all these scene items. So we have the items in the scene. In the editor, we want to configure them, like change start positions, maybe add some scripts to them. And then we actually want to start the engine. So when we start it, I am not going to go into every bit, but I think this part might be really interesting. So we start it, and then we have this part over here. So it might look a little bit strange at first, but we create a function. It's called frame, and frame will be called by using request animation frame. So what is request animation frame if you're not familiar with that? It basically tells your browser like, hey, I want to perform an animation. That's actually what it's mostly used for. And yeah, give me the next, or call this function again when the next update needs to happen. Usually this is kind of depending on the frame rate of your monitor. So this could be higher or lower, depending if you have like a 60 Hertz display. This function should be called 60 times a second. If you have 120, it will be called 120 times a second. So we basically tell it like, hey, so next time I have to refresh my animation, call this frame function. Then we're gonna check for sure if the engine is actually running. We do some stuff with calculating the delta time, because I showed you we need the delta time in the update function. And then this is where the magic happens. It's called update component. So if we go into update components, this is basically what it does. So we have all the items in the scene, and we pass the delta time that we just calculated. Then we're going to look into the scene. So into all of these objects, we have test, we have test 2, we have test 3. And for each of them, we're going to check like, hey, does this item have a script component attached to it? Because a script component is basically the component that you want to use to add scripts to a component. And then if it has a script component, we want to call onUpdate. And then that's basically what happens when we go to the rotator component. That will actually call this function and updates all of this. So then those values are updated, and the engine then knows like next time the engine is gonna make a visual change into the game, it's gonna take these values and show them on the screen. I hope that gives a bit of insight. I think this is super interesting because it allows to so many possibilities. It's not just scripts, but like you could also imagine that maybe you would make like an audio player component, and that audio player component will play sound on start, and you could also attach it to an object in the scene. And I don't know, I just think this is so fascinating. So okay, so next thing I did, you cannot change everything yet in the scene, but when I select an item, if you saw my last video, you will see that I updated the UI a little bit. I think it looks a bit cleaner now. It's still not perfect. I'm not the best at CSS and making things pretty, but I want them to be functional. So you could also now use these arrows to kind of change it a little bit. You also seen that the scene updates on the right. Might be easier to see when I change the scale with something like that. You could rotate it like that, and you can even change the name to like hi YouTube, and then in the scene that item will also have that name. So I think those things are pretty cool. Also made a bit of a prototype of showing the components that you added to the object. So you can see here that the hi YouTube scene item has a rotator component added to it. It will even show those values that we added in the script, like the scale speed and the rotation speed, but you cannot edit them at the moment. You can just see like, hey, these items these parameters have these values. Because I want to build something where you could add these components in the scene itself. So here you would like click on like add component. That doesn't work at the moment. But the way that you do add it is currently, let's go to the app.tsx. So this is kind of what's being used right now. We have an array of test items. These are the items that you see in the scene when I initially load the game, the editor of the game. You see like test, test 2, test 3. This is a list of components, and here I can kind of add that new rotator component. So that's a little bit on how that works. The last thing I did is I can already add some items to the scene itself. It's just a little bit of a prototype, but like when I on the top left, I added this add button, and whenever I press it, as you can see, spaceships are getting added to the scene. And when I press start, it looks really funny because I can rotate all of them at the same time. Because at the moment, I passed that rotator component script to all of them. Oh, and they're also scaling. Hold on. You can also, if you select an item here on the left, and should I make it even larger? Maybe like that. When I press the delete key on my keyboard, it will be removed. But I do have a problem yet. Like it's removed from the editor, but it's not removed from the game. I have to look into that, but that's just the way it goes. Another thing that you might have noticed is like, so when we start the game, we want to reset it based to the initial state of the editor. And then when we stop it, it also has to go back. So when I press start, you see like these items increase in scale. Sorry. Okay. So there. It's so distracting. Okay. So they're increasing. Okay, I gotta stop this. So they're increasing by scale. They become larger. But like when I press stop, it has to reset to the initial state. So there you can kind of see like when the game is kind of taking over. It's updating things in the scene. But when I go back to edit mode, it has to be the way it started. So that's kind of how it works. I am having so much fun on this project, and I truly hope that it will inspire you a little bit to maybe try this out yourself, or if you just think it's fun to follow my progress along and learn a little bit from that, that's fine as well. Please let me know in the comments if you have some suggestions on what you think the engine should do next. And yeah, see you in the next bit. Bye bye.